When my American flag was yanked down by the HOA's self-proclaimed Aesthetic Overlord, I never expected a neighborhood dispute to skyrocket into a battle for freedom and identity. Can I rally my neighbors before it's too late? Before we begin today's deranged HOA story, tell me you haven't had your fill of irrational and power-grabbing HOA nonsense. Smash that like button to show you're on my side, and drop a comment if you've ever faced off against an overbearing homeowners association. Be sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell, because this saga's only getting crazier from here. As we erupted into our triumphant chant, fluttering the absurdly large flags we designed the night before, yes, the ones that could blanket a small country, it was palpable that our revelry was radiating through the block. Oh, how the faces of my neighbors lit up. Each chant felt more like a group therapy session rather than a protest against the stoic Karen Hastings. Here we were, ordinary people, opting to bask in the glow of freedom rather than cower under HOA tyranny. Everybody joined in, and I, in my glory, felt like some American Idol contestant belting a patriotic anthem. Little did we know, our audacious antics were about to unlock doors we didn't even know existed. But first, Karen's face, the performance of a lifetime, was due. Just when I thought our hilarious disruption was about to send Karen into an existential crisis, my neighbor Mrs. Hargrove, known for her penchant for dramatic flair, swooped in with a swath of flags tied together like some sort of Roman triumphal arch. "Karen, darling, want to join our little parade? There's no HOA rule against patriotic celebrations unless you simply can't handle all this joy." She twinkled with a twirl that would put any seasoned dancer to shame. Karen's eyes widened as they shifted focus from order, the lens through which she commanded her HOA kingdom, to chaos, the wonderful revelry expanding around her like confetti in the wind. What was this? A coup d'etat against her austere regime? Oh, precious Karen! Luis, ever the comedic genius, strutted up to Karen, waving a mini flag like a seasoned entertainer. "We've got burgers sizzling like freedom itself, and nachos that could make even your rules seem cheesy. Join us, Karen. We promise we won't punish you with forced fun." The atmosphere dipped into a euphoric disarray, laughter reverberating off the houses which had become witnesses to a raucous crossfire of pizzazz and indignant authority. And just when I thought this was the peak of absurdity, I saw the unthinkable, a smirk creeping onto Karen's meticulously manicured face. Wait, did this mean she was actually loosening up? Was it possible to churn a rigid fortress into a jello mold of acceptance? As the party reached further heights of jubilance, I couldn't help but notice Luis had taken charge, a whirlwind of BBQ sauces, flags, and mischief as he rallied the troops alongside the grill. Sizzling up a storm, he declared, "All right, team, for every bite of hot dog we eat, we gain a new right to celebrate our freedoms. Now, who wants to try my special Liberty Carolina's BBQ sauce?" The fragrance wafting through the air, mingled with the sound of unrestrained laughter, made even the stiffest hearts in the crowd soften. I saw neighbors forging bonds with every playful roast, united by the Herculean act of asserting their individuality in a neighborhood that had taken routine to a whole new level of bland compliance. In a moment that could have rivaled any award-winning sitcom, Karen shook her head slowly, processed the absurdity, and opened her mouth, ready to drop a tidal wave of indignation. But before she could cast her aspersions upon our sovereignty, the unexpected happened. Somewhere from behind her, the music swelled. Yes, another neighbor, Keith from down the block, had commandeered his Bluetooth speaker and started belting out "Born in the USA." The irony was delicious, blasting into the air like freshly popped popcorn at a movie. "Listen up!" the song seemed to shriek as the entire lawn erupted into an impromptu dance-off. I could hardly breathe from laughter. Karen stood amidst the musical debacle, cornered by merriment, affection, and flag-themed dance moves that could make even the most astute observer flash a grin. I felt compassion and camaraderie surge as the political tension was magically replaced with something far more potent: community spirit. Our cries for freedom turned into collaborative choreography as we bounded in rhythm, like we were auditioning for a Broadway show, sending poor Karen into sensory overload. It was like a wild tornado of joy swirling around her, rendering her usual barbed comments ineffective and out of scope. Maybe this was the real power of celebration? The connection we established made it clear that this was not merely a protest, but a revolution against drudgery wrapped up in liberation and laughter. Sure, maybe we could pivot at the last minute and make this a social experiment of freedom rather than an outright defiance, let's just say. The charity of a carefree spirit transcended any rules she thrived on. As I stood at the forefront of our magnificent absurdity, the once infuriating Karen transformed before my eyes. To her credit, she indeed turned to the crowd, and after a fleeting moment, gathered herself for what felt like an Olympic-level mental feat to make peace with this sea of rebellion. I suppose your enthusiasm is admirable," she muttered, and for half a heartbeat, I thought her posture might hint at impending defeat. But alas, with the drama of a Shakespearean king, she firmly added, "However, that doesn't mean I won't remind you all. This neighborhood still has rules." And with that, my jaw dropped. Were we about to witness an attempted coronation of Karen the Untouchable during her most helpless moment? Could she be that bold to douse our Fun for America flame? The challenge echoed in the air like a siren, and I leaned even closer. I knew it was time for the next twist in our delightful rebellion. How hilarious would it be to turn her proclamation against her? Until she was willing to take it to the highest court, our HOA dreams might be entirely within reach. As the sun set on our spontaneous soiree, illuminating the chaos around us, I finally understood the true power of community mischief. Karen stood there, rigid as a statue perched on a pedestal of her own making, surveying the residents of Maple Lane dancing as if freedom were the theme of some festive masquerade. I scanned my now laughing neighbors, disheveled bunting in hand, twirling amidst a chorus of laughter, and thought to myself, were these the same people who had simmered quietly in shadowy corners under HOA oversight? Apparently, it took a collective liberation to awaken this ensemble of spirited animators. Seeing this, joy bubbled within me, as I took a mental note that this would be our unstoppable force against anything Karen or her clipboard could conjure up. This, my friends, was about more than just the American flag. It was the bold reclamation of a neighborhood that had teetered on the brink of sameness for far too long. Luis dove into the festivities like a mariner discovering a new island. "Everyone," he called, arms wide in grand gesture, his BBQ spatula in hand. "Tonight, we feast, we dance, and we remind us Hastings, the only watchdog around here, is the one you find on your porch, scratching for belly rubs." No one could resist a chuckle at the mental image, especially as Karen cast suspicious glances around, her eyes darting between the sizzling food and our unabashed joy. Logic dictated that a woman who practically bathed in authority wouldn't let her guard down so easily, but even the most rigid figures have cracks in their armor, and Luis was delivering comedy gold in spades. The burgers turned sizzling flames into an aromatic lullaby, intoxicating the atmosphere, serving as a reminder that perhaps food is indeed the universal language, speaking louder than any HOA declaration ever could. But Karen, ever the meticulous captain of her sinking ship, wasn't ready to let this vibrant hijinks ruin her day. Gathering her willpower like a knight-donning armor, she sidled up to the gathering as music blared defiantly behind her, like some ostentatious movie soundtrack announcing a worthy foe. "Listen, everyone," she began, voice wavering between authority and incredulity. "This neighborhood has standards, and I won't stand for this kind of outlandish behavior." But before she could launch into her diatribe, the crowd, emboldened by the sheer ridiculousness of the moment, erupted in a resounding cheer. It was as if rebellion was the latest dance craze, and everyone was somehow aware that Karen, the frumpy queen of conformity, was detached from the rhythm that pulsed in the air. I felt invigorated, my heart racing alongside the beat of liberation. This was our moment. Her critique became our comic relief. In a flash of inspiration, I seized the opportunity. With fire in my eyes, I stepped closer to Karen, holding a giant neon poster that read, "Freedom ain't just a rule," which plainly illustrated my point, while daubs of glittery paint sparkled rebelliously in the twilight. "Karen," I called out, tasting the exhilaration of reclaimed speech, "have you ever considered that while you're busy guarding narrow ideals, you're missing out on the grand tapestry of this community? We aren't just residents. We're humans who crave connection, joy, and some killer hot dogs. Maybe the only rule we really care about is the rule to live vibrantly." Seizing the moment, I gestured toward the neighbors who nodded, half swaying in rhythm to the beat of their newfound camaraderie. Whispers danced through the crowd, growing louder. This was a declaration that struck at the heart of Karen's kingdom. A glimmer of uncertainty flickered across Karen's face, a visage that had often been so composed and daunting it could easily crush dreams with a single glare. Perhaps she had never been confronted with forgetful laughter, or the sheer power of community exultation. Her confidence visibly wavered. And in that ultimate clash of energies, I pressed on. "And don't forget about the freedom to display the American Flag Act, Karen. Not to mention the joy that displays can bring. Who tossed around rules so cavalierly that they forgot about passion? My voice rose above the cacophony of laughter, a defining battle cry in this theater of the absurd, while I suddenly realized that acknowledging freedom has a tendency to ignite rebellions, but compassion leads to connections. Across the crowd, jerseys turned toward me as neighborly solidarity sparked anew. Carlos, bless him, broke into an arbiter's dance in support, waving his own handcrafted sign reading, "Let us flag wave, Karen, we are not robots." My once intimidating opponent began to crumple, not unlike recycled paper being crushed, struggling to piece together the authority she had come to cherish as unfaltering. The tension morphed from that of a cat-and-mouse chase to something fuzzy and light, the type of feeling that crept into your heart and made rebellion and celebration impossible to separate. And as I swung into the choir of Let It Be, a suddenly raucous karaoke number led by neighbor Heather, I caught a glimpse of a smile beginning to break through the fortress of Karen Hastings' stony visage. Just then, it hit me like the BBQ sauce dripping from my hands. Perhaps this performance wasn't just ours to execute, it was conjuring something bigger, a laughter-induced shift in the undercurrents of our neighborhood. Karen finally slumped into an uncharacteristic silence. Clipboard drooped under the burden of a new surreal realization as the crowd stood behind me, armed not only with flags, but unrelenting amusement and voice. And then, in an astonishing plot twist worthy of a film finale, she responded with a hesitant tone. "Maybe I could reconsider some of the rules?" The crowd erupted like firecrackers as we mingled together, hearts pounding as an anthem of triumph settled in the air. Was this a ceasefire or a massive win for all of Maple Lane? As I looked around at my neighbors, oblivious to the HOA, singing and dancing, I knew this moment marked the first seeds of resistance and a beautiful, glowing testament to the unmistakable power of community. The once overbearing reign of the HOA had begun to dissolve, fueled by laughter, joy, and a BBQ on a summer night that even Karen couldn't resist. There might still be rules, but I was sure we'd painted our rebellion bright enough for everyone in the neighborhood to see. As Karen Hastings stormed onto my property, clipboard at the ready and sunglasses glimmering like a battle helmet, I couldn't help but feel the tension rise like a well-shaken soda can. Picture it, a bright Saturday morning, sun dancing gaily across my lawn, and here comes the self-proclaimed Aesthetic Overlord, on a mission to rescue our cul-de-sac from the horrifying crime of patriotism. I stood frozen, taking in the scene, my proud American flag fluttering bravely in the breeze like an innocent lamb among wolves. Little did I know that the only wolf around was dressed in impeccable tailored attire and sporting curated overconfidence that could shatter glass. A girl can only hope that my reaction to this unfolding debacle could match the melodrama of reality TV. I mean, who needs cable when you have HOA shenanigans unfolding right outside your window? "Oh no, not the flag!" she cried, her voice reaching pitch levels usually reserved for opera singers, immediately drawing the attention of every neighbor within a 3-mile radius. I mean, Karen, chill. It's not like I'd hung a neon sign reading "Welcome to the Revolution." Yet here she was, labeling my symbol of freedom as an eyesore, defacing our joint utopia with her uppity aesthetic views. As she closed the distance to my flag, her heavy sigh could be heard 3 houses down, and I nearly burst into laughter at the absurdity of it all. Clearly, she felt it was her duty to preserve the visual harmony of our neighborhood. After all, nothing screams, "We'll maintain my perfect lawn," like oppressing the very essence of democracy. And wouldn't you know it? Before my stunned eyes, she reached up and, yes, physically yanked my flag down from its pole with a ferocity that could only be likened to an over-caffeinated toddler on a candy spree. "Were you planning on let the dramatic flag removal be a surprise to the audience?" I quipped, attempting to mask my seething outrage with sarcasm and feigned bewilderment. The flag fell to the ground in a heap, while the sound of my heart and rage sounded like a drum roll, marking the beginning of a revolution. My revolution. The laughter from my neighbor Luis barely cut through the thick tension in the air, but I knew he would back me up. There's always something unexpectedly comedic about the sheer dedication of a woman hell-bent on establishing order, especially when that order seems to prioritize aesthetics over human experience. With Luis watching and smiling like someone who just witnessed the funniest thing in the world, I could feel my cheeks hurt from holding back laughter and rage at the same time. I glanced at the fluttering flag, a piece of fabric that was now crumbled and tarnished under the heel of tyranny. My once idly grazing thoughts about settling into this neighborhood dove straight into the arena of combat. There was no way I was letting this stand. "Karen," I snapped, pushing back against the bubbling outrage, "you have just officially crossed into the land of absurdity. My next move? filing a federal complaint. The look of disbelief on her face was priceless, as if I'd just revealed I was, in fact, the reincarnation of George Washington himself. What could she possibly do next? Install a "no fun allowed" sign in the neighborhood? It was my turn to rally the troops and serve up a plateful of righteous retaliation. After she stomped off in a huff, brandishing my flag like a crime scene artifact for all to witness, I could barely contain my laughter. You know, they say the pen is mightier than the sword, but I'd argue the complaint form just might knock the clipboard out of her hands. I said to Luis, who was mirroring my disbelief with an equally amused expression. In that moment, he became my confidant in revolution. I pulled out my laptop, firing off what could only be described as a window-rattling tempest of an email filled with all kinds of legal jargon, underpinned by my unwavering belief in liberty and really good bullet points. I chuckled at how dramatic the process felt. It was as though I were penning the Declaration of Independence, not just complaining about a flag. With each keystroke, I felt the gears of justice begin to move. Fueled by a blend of indignation and a sense of community spirit, I could hear the winds of change beginning to blow, my hair flowing dramatically in the invisible breeze of defiance. What part of the HOA bylaws says that a patriotic symbol is against the aesthetic guidelines? I pondered aloud, crafting arguments that could hold water against the legion of entitlement. Little did Karen know, she was igniting a fire in me that was determined to reshape the very fabric of our neighborhood. My Facebook post, complete with exclamation points and witty one-liners, went viral among the disgruntled homeowners, providing ample support and motivation in the quest against oppressive authoritarianism. "Time to dissolve this HOA," I declared, my battle cry resonating in the backyard as I envisioned each surreal step toward victory, and thus began the wild ride to not just reclaim my flag, but to dissolve an HOA that was entirely out of control. Fueled by indignation and unwavering resolve, I dove headfirst into a Google rabbit hole that would make even the most seasoned internet sleuth feel like a novice. My fingers danced across the keyboard as I searched for every shred of information regarding my rights to display the American flag. With each click, my excitement grew louder, rivaling the sound of a marching band parading through the streets, proclaiming that I was ready to declare war, an informational one, albeit it turned out the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act was my golden ticket to avenge my red, white, and blue honor. I felt like I was holding the keys to the kingdom, ready to unleash every detail of constitutional law upon Queen Karen and her minions of mediocrity. Oh, how deliciously ironic it was that this absurd situation had whisked me into a grand crusade to uphold the very freedom upon which our great nation was built. As I sat in my kitchen, sipping coffee that was as strong as my newfound determination, I envisioned Queen Karen rising like a horror movie villain, complete with dramatic lighting. I could almost hear the ominous score playing in the background as she fumed over her clipboard, her platinum blonde bun bobbing with every irate thought. I chuckled to myself, imagining her scoffing as she muttered incomprehensible rules about the forbiddance of so-called unsightly decorations. You'd think that she was a guardian of the universe itself, determined to protect us from the horrors of bright colors and festive spirit. The melodrama played out in my mind as I fervently drafted that formal complaint, shuffling papers and crossing out sentences like a gossip columnist crafting the juiciest of exposés. With each stroke of the pen, my comedic flair flourished. I even enacted hypothetical courtroom scenarios in front of my bathroom mirror. Forget an Oscar. I just earned my place in the HOA Hall of Fame for most dramatic contentious dispute. Fast forwarding through time, with no more dramatic distractions, I hit send on that complaint, heart racing with defiance. And let me tell you, there's something cathartic about dispatching a digital battle cry into cyberspace. But as I sat back, staring at the glowing screen, a mischievous thought wiggled its way into my brain. Will they even bother to read it, or will it suffer a fate worse than being crumpled into a trash can? I chuckled, imagining my complaint being tossed aside like a crumpled fast food bag, unnecessary, unwanted, but definitely not forgotten. I didn't just want to reclaim my flag. I wanted to rattle their foundations with a fervor that would make even the gruffest of heads take a look at their sidewalk and question their choices. The days that followed felt like living in between slow-motion sequences and fast-paced montages that would fit right into a superhero movie. I rallied the troops, blogging, posting on social media like the liberator I was determined to be. And let me tell you, my neighbors were not just intrigued, they were on fire. Share after share transformed my little cyber campaign into a full-blown digital revolution. Luis was on the front lines too, wielding humor like a knight with a shining sword. "What's next, Jordan?" he quipped one evening over the fence. A petition against the unsightly concrete decorations in their yards? Guesses, memes, and a surprising amount of enthusiasm over how to rally the community turned the tide from a simple complaint into a bona fide crusade. But with every post and every comment that flowed in, the thrill of rebellion lulled me into a false sense of boldness, and soon reality hit hard. My phone buzzed non-stop with alerts, and soon enough I found myself drowning in a sea of supportive people eager to join the cause, but also the conflicting opinions that had been brewing in our previously peaceful neighborhood. Voices that once whispered about HOA rules were rising into a chorus of intrigued, "Did you hear?" Conversations during schools, drop-offs, and grocery runs. Suddenly, my delightful little block of suburban bliss, where I had once envisioned sunny barbecues and friendly chats, transformed into a battlefield of public opinion, and let's just say that Karen wasn't too happy about it. The thought of her fuming in her living room with her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of like a little bird who just adrift in a sea of idiocy made me snicker. Soon enough, I discovered that the intended humor of my posts didn't always translate into positivity. While many neighbors jumped on the bandwagon, a small but vocal faction waved their scrolling fingers against excessive flag waving, claiming it tarnished the community coherence. Coherence! Can you even believe that? Cohesion priorities, apparently, dictated by the individual standards of our very own tyrant queen. Sigh. I reluctantly realized that I would need allies in the movement. Grumbling about the HOA could only go so far before it devolved into a divisive argument over grilled corn at the next barbecue. So, it was time to dig deeper, forming a coalition with those who felt just as stifled by the HOA's pompous cloud of authority and ridiculous bylaws. Time to unite the sympathizers, reclaim the neighborhood, and, dare I say, dissolve that HOA once and for all. Thus began the next phase of my audacious coup against Queen Karen and her dominion. I stepped out with a renewed sense of duty the next morning, armed with only my trusty notepad and enough coffee to fuel a small city. As I strolled through the neighborhood, each house took on the form of a fortress. Each mailbox transformed into a potential recruiting station for my cause. My good neighbor Luis joined me, his jovial spirit like sunshine on my battle-hardened shoulders. "They can't make you stop flying the flag, right?" He grinned, his laid-back demeanor ever so infectious. I responded with a flourish of my pen, scribbling arguments, grievances, and plans of attack. First, I had to identify our target audience, those under Karen's oppressive rule who were too afraid to voice their dissent. So I began knocking on doors, executing my best "You're dissatisfied with the HOA too, right?" spiel as if I were selling Girl Scout cookies, with a dash of vibrant enthusiasm that was borderline manic. After 3 doors, 2 awkward conversations, and 1 delightful elderly woman who had her flag flapping proudly, I was on a roll. "And what do you think, Mr. Thompson?" I asked, eyebrow arched at my next subject, who was deep in contemplation, peering out at his pristine lawn with its regimented flower beds. "Have you seen the latest HOA newsletter? I mean, who wrote that drivel, Karen herself?" I couldn't help but chortle. The moment he cracked a smile, I knew I had him hooked. I leaned in closer, whispering dramatically as though sharing top-secret intel. "She said my flag detracted from community aesthetics. I mean, seriously, what's next? Glow-in-the-dark flamingos?" His laughter was thunderous, and I was gaining ground. One by one, I was assembling my ragtag team of disenchanted homeowners, each person a beacon of disgruntlement shining bright, ready to join my flag campaign. As I collected signatures like some enthusiastic political candidate, minus the annoying TV ads, an idea struck me harder than a sledgehammer to a melon. Why not organize a community meeting, a little gathering to discuss our aspirations for a HOA-free neighborhood, all while sipping on homemade lemonade and nodding vigorously in support of one another? I hurried to set things in motion. A Facebook event was born with an inventive title, Freedom Fest, Reclaiming Our Flags and Our Homes. This was it, the final straw of audacity. I could practically see the rallying cry banner unfurling in the wind, complete with dramatic music playing as the camera zoomed in on my determined face. With a sinking heart, I remembered the HOA's letter, filled with those passive-aggressive remarks echoing in my mind, but I sloughed them off as minor hurdles on the bright pathway to freedom. Days passed and the meeting loomed like an approaching storm, my excitement compounded by the volunteers actively spreading the word. My neighborhood's atmosphere transformed. It buzzed with a delicious blend of anticipation and rebellious energy. A small army of residents, who once trod timidly through life, now found themselves buoyed by the possibility of change. When the night finally arrived, a crowd gathered at Luis's place like moths drawn to a flame, ready to engage in something that could either be the dullest meet and greet of all time or an exhilarating turning point in the HOA saga. Luis outfitted his garden with string lights twinkling amid the leaves, and I felt as if we had transcended into a parallel universe where cheeseburgers and freedom reigned supreme. As I stood there in front of an eager crowd, I channeled my inner motivational speaker. "Friends, neighbors, warriors of liberty," I began, my voice rising fervently. "Tonight, we unite not just for our love of the flag, but for all that it represents: freedom, individuality, and, let's be real, basic rights. We cannot cower under the delicate weight of Karen Hastings and her group of aesthetic enforcers any longer." The room erupted in approving cheers and gasps. And just like that, my neighbors were ready to scrap the HOA and fight for autonomy with me. With each loud proclamation, we sketched plans to axe the HOA from our esteemed community. I imagined fireworks bursting in the sky as we unified against the architectural tyranny, and I could almost see it. A future where the neighborhood's colors were as vibrant as its spirit. However, as the meeting continued and enthusiasm hung in the air thick as molasses, a worried face peered from the rear. "But what if Karen retaliates?" someone ventured hesitantly, insecurity visibly gnawing at their spirit. An uncomfortable silence enveloped us like storm clouds. I felt the potential for rebellion clash with trepidation in the confines of my chest. All my grand plans seemed desperately naive, with just the hint of fear creeping in. It was time to reassure my comrades. "What do we have to lose?" I interjected, raising my arms dramatically. "A few HOA fines? One passive-aggressive newsletter? It's just paper, people." A chorus of laughter rippled through, sharp and vibrant, and that laughter gave way to a collective sense of determination, pumping life into our cause. When the energy surged through the room, I bounced on my toes, feeling the pulse of camaraderie coursing around us. We devised strategies, from neighborhood yard signs to a petition that would send waves beyond our quaint block, rippling all the way to the heart of the HOA, snatching anybody who went against our rights. "I'll put out the first yard sign," I declared, boldly volunteering. My friends cheered, their spirits rekindled, and in that moment, I knew we were no longer a disjointed collection of weary souls. We had morphed into a formidable coalition of defenders, ready to reclaim our dignity and our flags. This battle had just begun, and I couldn't wait to watch Karen Hastings unleash her fury, or as I preferred to envision it, dig her own metaphorical grave. As we rallied together under the stars, I realized there's nothing more potent than the unity of those with nothing left to lose. The flag waved proudly in my mind, a symbol of our rebellion, and now it was time to make our stand, turning dreams into action. The night air buzzed with nervous excitement as we finalized preparations for our flamboyant Flag Day celebration. The stakes had never felt higher. Like a wedding planner for revolution, I was on a mission to turn our gathering into the biggest HOA spectacle this community had ever witnessed. I envisioned a carnival atmosphere, complete with BBQ, vibrant decorations featuring flags of every size, and of course the pièce de résistance, a flag-themed costume contest. "Luigi," I called, adorned in a red, white, and blue getup. "Are we ready for the new American Revolution, or should I add some more sparklers?" The twinkling lights hung like stars in the garden, while Luis practically jumped at my enthusiasm. "We might just become a neighborhood reality show at this rate," he chuckled, adjusting his own flag-pattern bow tie. I had to admire his readiness to join the fanciful warfare we were about to unleash upon Karen and the HOA. With the bold directive issued for everyone to show up in their most outrageous flag attire, the invitations spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. Residents were excited. A few seemed almost giddy at the prospects of brutalizing Karen's sense of decorum. Dreaming of a colossal "Welcome to Freedom Fest" banner, I attached the word "rally" to lighten the proposal, thinking of fierce chants echoing across our lawns. As I passed by neighborhoods adorned with picket fences and perfect flowers, I felt like a gladiator walking into the Colosseum armed not with swords but flags and a grill. I could almost hear the echo of my revolutionary anthem. 1 if by land, 2 if by BBQ, and 3 if by the finest flag-themed nachos. The excitement felt contagious as neighbors eagerly began planning their outfits, pulling out every conceivable shade of red and blue from their closets. It was like a themed potluck of liberty and chaos, all lovely eccentricities wrapped up in American pride. On the eve of the grand event, Luis and I found ourselves knee-deep in burgers, hot dogs, and an impressive array of sides. Because what's a celebration without an overflowing selection of potato salad, right? Our party prepped a veritable feast fit for a backyard brigade. I can hear Karen squealing from here, and honestly, I'm loving every second of it, I proclaimed, flipping a burger that was practically burning with ambition. As we set up picnic tables and adorned them with tablecloths sporting all colors of the flag, I felt over the top, almost theatrical. Each carefully crafted detail felt like a calculated message to the HOA and Karen. Fireworks couldn't compete with our approach to reclaiming freedom. Would there be fines for excessive merriment? Probably, but I didn't care. I was high on adrenaline, determinedly crusading for our community's right to joy and national expression against all odds. The morning of Flag Day arrived like the dawn of a new era, bright and bold, illuminating our cause with glorious sunshine. As I zipped up my patriotic ensemble, a sleeveless shirt squarely showcasing the flag and matching shorts, I couldn't stop grinning. The day had finally arrived, and our neighbors would soon emerge from their cocoons of conformity. I could sense the quiet rebellion in my neighbors' hearts, courageously replacing their daily drudgeries with flag-themed magic. Luis casually swung by, wearing a heroic cape adorned in stars. You know, if we keep this up, we might inspire a whole new trend. HOA hero costumes, he declared, cornily striking a Superman pose. The laughter lifted my spirit as I witnessed the satisfaction on his face. Forget the HOA. Today was about community, camaraderie, and defiance in the name of our rights. As guests rolled in by the droves, adorned in every imaginable flag-inspired outfit, the ambiance shifted from a backyard BBQ to a jubilant parade. Look at Mr. Thompson. He's really committing to the look with that extravagant flag cape, I exclaimed, barely containing my laughter. Flags wrapped around waists, worn as scarves, or proudly placed on hats upgraded the ordinary to extraordinary. The fragrant wafts of burnt burgers contrasted beautifully against the clamor of joy and laughter. Just when I thought the event couldn't get any more festive, in strode Karen Hastings, her lips drawn tight like a cello string, her pristine blouse resembling a distant, polished fortress. Was it a mirage? Or had my day just taken a dramatic turn? Full of unyielding courage, we welcomed Karen into our spectacle of freedom and consumer capitalism, hearts racing in anticipation of her reaction. Karen, welcome to Freedom Fest, I greeted her, folding my arms defiantly, my voice saturated with joy and brilliance. You've officially been invited to our flag fiesta, where we celebrate all that's great about America, community, cooperation, and of course, the invincible flag. Whatever chilling scoff she had prepared dissolved as incredulous expressions twisted across her face. Jordan, you dare? The boldness of her rebuke faded, malleable, as cheers erupted around her, drawn irresistibly into our jubilant festivities. For a second, I thought she might summon her army of HOA warriors to shut us down, but instead, she stood there like a statue, as if entrapped by the colorful rebellion overcoming the peace she believed she commanded with her aesthetic regime. If anyone thought we were going to back down now, they'd mistaken that festival spirit for meekness. Suddenly, the energy reached a fever pitch as we decided to prankify our dear HOA president. Who's ready to ambush the Queen of Conformance? Luis bellowed over the hilarity, eliciting agreement as our brave battalion prepared to engage in some flag-waving friendly fire. We stormed over to Karen like a legion of comical jesters slipping past her stoic poise, and amidst laughter, a collective battle cry erupted. What do we want? Freedom. When do we want it? Now. Who knew our little protest could turn into a full-blown entertainment extravaganza? Really, I couldn't wait to see Karen's expression in response to the joyous ruckus we had ignited. Would her iron grip on her HOA dictatorship truly withstand this festival of freedom and unity? Would our flags fly higher than the HOA's absurd rules? I was about to find out. Thanks for sticking around with me through the chaos to the end. Want more high-stakes HOA drama? Check out our recent HOA clash with the video on the right. Or let YouTube pick your next wild ride with the video on the left. Whichever way you go, buckle up. There's plenty more HOA insanity on the way. Tune in again for more HOA chaos.